And let me tell you about the Higher Self Expo July 2021. It's a 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. Today's guest is a guest speaker at this event. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com. Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I did a lovely Feel Good conversation today. Had a lovely conversation with Aaron Abke, who was my guest, and he's also a fellow presenter at the Higher Self Expo, which is taking place in less than a month's time now. And it's actually really late here now. It's like almost midnight. My kids are in bed. And I've just been reflecting about the conversation, because the subject of this was finding freedom and ending suffering. And so, you know, in this conversation, we're exploring the sort of ins and outs and the ups and downs of the religious or spiritual life that Aaron has had. And, you know, why am I interested in this? Well, I guess because most of us have got a bit of skin in the game, haven't we? You know, most of the people listening to this, most of you guys will have some kind of ups and downs with religion and spirituality yourself. Yeah, and the thing that I really loved about Aaron is that he was just talking really freely about his, you know, the glory, I guess, of his religious upbringing, and then how he came across religious bigotry and things that just didn't really match the God that he knew existed, you know, the God in his heart. And this is what I really enjoyed about this conversation, was it was from heart to heart, you know, it was very, very real, you know, and not very dogmatic at all. For somebody who is the son of a pastor, and I say that very, very deliberately, because I realized earlier when I was talking to him, I was saying son of a pastor. And of course, you know, anyone in the UK will think I'm talking about spaghetti or something. You know, some things get a bit lost in translation. But anyway, Aaron Abke, he is wonderful. He is the son of a pastor. He studied theology and music, I believe. He wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps. Age 23, he had a bit of a turnaround, and he'll explain, you'll hear this in a second. In between that and his spiritual awakening at 27, he was a model and pro bodybuilder, I believe. So, you know, he's had quite a varied experience. And now in his 30s, you know, he's running a really successful coaching program to help people end their suffering and find freedom. So exactly what we're talking about today. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's bring him on now, shall we? Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Hey, Louisa. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to get you here today, because I know it's only 8:45 where you are, or 8:51 now, isn't it? So it's
yes.
Not many people doing live, you know, connections like this.
Well, I go live every day at 7 a.m. for one of my courses, so I'm an early bird, so it works out.
And with the people that you're working with on your courses, are they in the same time zone as you?
Some of them are, most of them aren't. Most are in America. We have a lot from the UK, a few from other places. So people, if they can't tune into the lives, they just watch the recording, you know, whenever they wake up in their time zone. But we have about 100 people that'll be live with us on any given morning.
Wow, that's incredible. I can't imagine that.
It's pretty fun.
Do you have somebody managing your chat room and things like that? Or do you manage to do it yourself?
Yeah, it's a big task. The whole group is about 250 people. So we do have an admin who helps us out with the Facebook group and emailing and all that stuff. But it's my co-leader, Mark Anthony Lord, and I who do the lessons and stuff every day together.
Wow, awesome. And seeing as this is live, you know, if you have a question about finding freedom or ending suffering, or more about Aaron's work, then please do just drop us a message. So in the introduction, I was saying, you know, that obviously you grew up around theology and a main doctrine. And then at age 23, something changed for you. Can you talk us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, what changed for me at that point was simply that I was working at a church that I was forced to confront a lot of ideologies and dogmas that I didn't have to confront growing up in my family's church. I was very blessed to grow up in a Christian denomination that kind of emphasized all the best things from Christianity. My dad never preached a sermon about hell, to my knowledge. We didn't talk about the rapture much or any of the dogmatic stuff, but it was just God, the goodness of God. We would have these 2-hour worship services and healing revival services. So we were having too much fun to care about the dark side of Christianity, so to speak. So then I took my first church job after I graduated from Oral Roberts University with a degree in music and theology to be a worship pastor. Yeah. I'd been leading worship my whole life growing up. And the church I worked at in San Jose was very fundamentalist. And we're always talking about who's going to hell, who's not, who's in the club, who's not in the club.
Yeah.
Women are inferior to men. The rapture draws nigh. The Bible is the infallible handwritten word of God and stuff. And I was just overwhelmed by all of this dogma that match or align with my experience of God. Yeah. So that's what caused me to start questioning. Like, it felt as if life put me into a corner and said, okay, Aaron, you've been ignoring these dogmas from this religion for your whole life, and you've been able to get away with it, but now you can't. Now you need to make a decision. Do you believe in this version of God or not? And it was just a resounding no for me.
Yeah.
If I know one thing on earth, I know that God does not exist. And so I can't betray myself any longer by working here or saying that I'm a Christian when I don't believe any of the things that Christian people say you have to believe to be a Christian, right? But I never left Christ or his teachings. They were always my guiding light. And so I considered myself almost sort of a Christian once I stopped making the Bible the standard, but I made Jesus the standard.
Yes.
That seemed to upset Christians a lot, paradoxically.
You'd think it wouldn't you?
I was like, I thought we were Christians, not Biblians, but okay.
Yeah. Yes, because I guess with through the idea of Jesus, you've got a really good example of what it is to lead to the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking at a book, it's almost like you're trying to be exacting about a set of rules and circumstances, and it's a very different scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, that was very much the problem that I came across with the idea of the Bible, which I always feared the Bible greatly. But because I had been exposed to so many different denominations, and every pastor I would listen to at any church I would go to would preach on these same pinnacle passages from the Bible, but they would all have a vastly different interpretation of them. And most of them were good and stuff, but it's like, but if this is the word of God, like, it kind of should have one universal meaning we all agree upon, but nobody agrees on it. We have thousands and thousands of denominations, all of which say that they're the one right denomination.
Yes.
So it dawned on me, like, people read this book through the filter of their own mind and perceptions and biases. So it can't possibly be inerrant if it's being filtered through a very fallible medium like the mind. And again, Christians didn't idea either.
And also, I guess the books get written as well by actual fallible people.
And there's that too, yes.
Interpretation of the word as well. We've got a hello from Shannon in Texas. How are you, Shannon? I hope your weekend retreat was good. Let us know if you've got a question, because I'm sure Aaron will be very open to answering it. I know you have a lot to think about, with oneness and stuff. So we've got Shannon joining us. I know there are some other people watching in, so please do send us your questions or let us know where you're listening in from. That'd be great. So how did your family react to your decision? That must have been quite a discussion to have, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I never had the discussion with them because I knew, of course, this isn't going to go over well if I try to I don't want to convince anyone of what I believe, because through my own experience, I could have never came to these conclusions if some other guy tried to convince me, and out of my own way of thinking. It just doesn't work like that in religion. You have to come to this conclusion of your own direct experience. Otherwise, you'll never agree with it. That's the nature of the ego, right? Yes. So I very much avoided ever talking about this stuff with my parents. But I was starting to post things on Facebook initially, because I had found a lot of answers that I found to be very satisfactory of here's why we don't have to, just because we don't have Bible is the inerrant handwritten letter from God, doesn't mean we throw it in the dumpster and say it's a worthless piece of crap or something.
Yeah.
A lot of post-Christians will do that with the Bible. And I just found that to be a very unnuanced way of looking at it. And also it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? There's plenty of good things about good teachings in the Bible we can draw from and lots of wisdom. So I found these answers that I thought would be very helpful for people who were questioning, here's why we can believe in a God of justice and righteousness that doesn't torture people forever. Like there's a mode of looking at justice that doesn't require penal substitution to be the only way it can happen. And I found that to be very liberating. So I would post about it to help other people. And all I really did was attract a lot of angry Christians who would argue with me. And I even ended up sort of unwittingly having a couple of debates with some pretty high level Christian pastors who a few I wasn't actually aware were like famous, pastors who people had like tagged them, go disprove this guy, And so then we start getting in this debate, and then someone's like, do you know who you're debating right now? I'm like, no, I don't. And I'm like, these people are so out of alignment with their own teachings that we teach the Christ, sort of like Gandhi said, I love your Christ, but not your Christians. They're so unlike your Christ. And that was always my main arguing point with them is like, if your tree is good, if your philosophy is true, what is real can't be threatened. What is true doesn't need defense. Why do you get so defensive and angry at me for having a different point of view? You're the one calling me names. You're the one accusing me of being evil and a cult leader and all this stuff. Have I called you a name? Have I cursed you at all? So which one of us is coming from a good tree?
Yeah. Yes. It's a bit like, what would Jesus do? kind of question.
Bingo.
What is the loving response in this situation? Does that thought originate from love?
Yeah.
So what is your religion as such? Like if I was to sort of characterize mine, I guess I see God in nature. I see it all around me. Every time I look at things around me, and I've always felt like this right from an early age. I just feel completely connected because I can see that there's something good or something very powerful that holds everything together. I look at everything and think, there's no way this is just a coincidence. There has to be something there. And I guess I call my own feelings, my own spirituality that wells up in me, I call that love. Where is it you're coming from?
Very much the same. I think when you get God out of this limited, restricted paradigm, it becomes very clear that God is everything and everyone is God. And then it becomes even more clear that, that was Jesus's recognition, right? That's why Jesus said the things he said, or that's the position that Christ was speaking from, is the position of oneness. The understanding there is only that. There's just that one substratum of reality, that one being, and all is that expressing itself. So there is no separate self. There is no individual separate person living its own life. We're all just God's dream, right? We're all the activity of God's mind. And so when one awakens to that fact, it feels very natural to speak from that place, and it feels very dishonest to speak from the place of a separate individual person, named Aaron. And I think that religion is built subconsciously maybe to restrict people from having that realization, because religion needs to be exclusive to be a religion, right? You have to confess certain doctrines and ascribe by certain practices, read a certain text. And so if all is the one is the all, where's religion fit into that? So it's all a subconscious construction of the ego over, thousands of years, of course, but this is how crafty the mind is it will find ways to keep you out of this epiphany. And once you have that epiphany, especially like Christ did, you're going to offend a lot of people who are believing that they are from reality. And that was what became obvious to me as well about Jesus, was at some point it was like, okay, well, as inspiring and even worshipful as this person of Christ was and is, that wasn't what inspired Christ himself, right? He was everything he was, and he became everything he became because he knew I and the Father are one, not because he confessed Jesus as his Lord and Savior. So it was like, I need to make that leap myself if I want to become like Christ.
Yeah. Yes, understood. I like that a lot. So you had your spiritual awakening around the age of 27, and I remember you telling me a little bit about it. It sounded like it was quite a cool experience, because weren't you at the Google gym? Is that right? Or
Yep.
I can't, of all the places I imagine people having
I know, right?
awakening, I imagine it to be like, I don't know, on some beautiful Hawaiian island or something, or in bed at night or something.
Almost never. Yeah.
So can you talk me through it a little bit? I've met quite a few people who have had spiritual awakenings, and the thing that sticks with me about them is that it's almost like their mind, as they know it, gets blown apart or deconstructed, and everything falls away. But I'd love to know your experience of it, and continued experience of it as well.
Yeah, very much so. It just continues always. And I think what happens is when the mind, or I guess when awareness captures a dramatically higher point of view than the mind has, the mind can only know objects. That's all it can know. So it has to label everything with a name and an idea and a concept. So when you, this is the conundrum of a spiritual awakening, is that there is just that one field of consciousness, just that one substratum, and everything is that. Like when you're dreaming at night, everything happening in the dream is what the mind is doing. So it's like in the dream world, everything is mind. There's no actual separate dream characters. It's all a play of mind. And in a way, it's happening now, but that is the universal mind, consciousness. And it's like it's right in front of us all the time. In fact, it's so close to us that there's no room to even see it. We are that, right?
Yeah.
But because the mind only knows objects, it's like we miss it. It's just right there all the time. And we're just going about daily life, totally overlooking it. And so a spiritual awakening to me is somehow you step back from the object knowing mind, and you become sort of the viewpoint of the substratum, and you realize, oh, wow, it's all just a dream. All of the person I thought I was, all of his problems and his stories don't exist. It's just a dream of consciousness.
Yeah.
And that realization, it's so expansive, and it creates so much sense of spaciousness and openness in you that that openness is sort of felt as this bliss, this blissful, delightful feeling of all is perfect, all is well. I have no problems and nothing to worry about because I am the one reality. And so you just get very blissed out on that realization. So that's essentially the experience I had at 27. I had been working at Google, as you said, as a personal trainer for about 4 years. And I was in a very dark place at that time, very depressed, and working through my, very sad, depressing, lonely thoughts every day. And so I was going up to this bout of my gym at Google for lunch every day, and I would listen to Eckhart Tolle. And it was the only thing I could do that would give me real peace of mind and sort of escape the constant stream of thinking and negative self-talk and stories. Yeah. So I loved that time of day, and I looked forward to it so much. And probably 3 months or so of doing that, it was just like any other day. And I went up there and was listening to some kind of lecture from Eckhart where he was sort of saying things that our mind says to us, the ego says, and then laughing at it of how silly and trivial it is.
Yeah.
And so he would laugh, the audience would laugh, I would laugh with the audience, and he repeated, 4 or 5 things. And at the 4th or 5th thing he said, something like, if only things would just go my way, then I could truly be happy. And I would laugh. And I sort of laughed myself into that realization where the picture zoomed out and I had this aerial view, and it was just so clear. It's just a story based on memory, moved by this idea that I'm a person, and it's like there's just this continuity of thought, but no person. There's just thought, and I'm just endowing the thought with an identity it doesn't have. Like I'm giving it all the meaning it has. And I started laughing just profusely at this joke that the universe was sort of playing on me. I played on myself, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's so brilliantly designed and masterful, but totally illusory. And so I laughed, and then I cried and wept at the beauty of it all. And it was like I had no hard feelings against reality for playing this way, because I knew it's all for a greater purpose to have this realization.
Yeah.
Like the greater the obstacle that the self seeks to overcome, the greater the depth of that realization. And so it was actually the depth of my suffering for so many years of depression that was able to catapult me into this spacious aerial view of distance. And so I spent 2 weeks in that state completely unbroken, where I was just totally blissed out. And I would almost like as a thought experiment would try to remember how to suffer, because it seems so impossible to suffer.
Yes.
Like how do I isolate myself again into this weird idea of being a character in a story? Wow, it's so weird. And then it was 2 weeks to the day that I woke up, and the first sort of egoic thought kicked in that I didn't recognize. And the thought was, wow, it's been 2 weeks that I've been in this state. I wonder if this will be my permanent state. I wonder if I am now enlightened.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it. And so slowly the ego crept back in, and the stories came back and had meaning again. But the difference was I had glimpsed liberation. I had glimpsed the natural state that we all actually are. And at that point, nothing else mattered. I stopped bodybuilding. I stopped modeling. I walked out of my life and just said, all that matters is this, and pursuing this state is my one desire in life. And so at that point, I used that experience as a catalyst to sort of remember what it's like and use it as conviction I could build upon to sort of reverse engineer how to get back into that state, and eventually just started sort of teaching about it.
Wow. It's funny, isn't it, how the ego creeps in. I've spent the last 9 years or so watching babies. I've got 3. My oldest is 9, and my littlest is 2. And I've got one
That'll
that's 5.
teach you a lot.
Yeah, and what I notice is often, like when they sleep, when they're really, really small, when they wake up, they're quite horrified to be here. Even though I'm right by their side pretty much the whole time, and I wear them and I breastfeed on demand and all that. I'm a very sort of attached mum. And my kids are kind of very dreamy. They're allowed to be those babies that can dream. And I'm not trying to say, come on, do this, do that. I just let them be. But they seem to go off in this place. And I always think they're actually really connected to who they really are. And then they learn, like the ego starts kicking in. They start trying to develop their character, and you start seeing it, and you see the purity almost fall from them. But it's obviously part of their journey. But one of the things that strikes me about small children is they love themselves. These babies, like when they look at their hands, they're just wonder of their hands. They look at their feet when they discover their feet for the first time, or their genitals for the first time. They're really kind of shocked and delighted, and everything is new and wonderful. And they obviously see things that we don't see, or possibly you do, but because they look into like different distances, and you can see they're interacting with something. They're part of something, and we lose that. And I've been around people at the end of their life and seen a similar thing. Do you think, as we're coming into our incarnation and also coming out of this state of being, do you think we kind of go beyond the veils a little bit? What's your experience of that?
Very much so. The experience I've had is that enlightenment is an unlearning. Right. It's not, you don't learn anything. You forget everything you thought you knew. And in that sense, children and babies are closer to reality than adults in that sense, because we adults look at children or babies, looking at their hand, and we go, oh, they're just so stupid. They don't know what anything means yet. So they're amazed at it. Soon they'll learn. It's just a hand. And it's like, no, actually, maybe we're the stupid ones because we think we know what reality is.
Yeah.
And the baby is in that don't know mind still. It doesn't know what anything is. So it's actually closer to reality because it's not naming it and not labeling it. And so reality is telling the baby what it is. And the baby is in, oh, wow, this amazing wide-eyed wonder that we can all actually recapture again if we can drop our labels and the arrogance that I know reality. And that's the foundation upon which enlightenment is discovered, is that I don't know what anything is, but that I can't know what it is, because the object knowing mind can only know labels and concepts, but the label's not the reality. The map's not the territory. I can study a map of San Francisco and I can explain to you the geography, but I've never stood on the Golden Gate Bridge. I've never tasted the food in San Francisco, walked on Pier 39. I've never experienced San Francisco. And so the object relating mind is like that. It's always staring at the map and it never puts the map down to like experience reality. And that's really just what the spiritual awakening is putting the map down and seeing the territory. Yes. That's a similar answer to, if anyone ever asks me if I believe in the globe earth or the flat earth, my answer, I have a body answer, like what my body tells me is correct. But then I just have to remind myself, I don't actually know. I'll never know until I actually see for myself what the experience is. And it might be something completely different, which is actually probably what I suspect it is. Like that there is no earth is probably a more accurate answer. But right. We are always labeling things, aren't we? Yes. So, I guess children are naturally in that enlightenment until we disabuse them of that, until we're almost like they're abusers, aren't we, as we're sort of conforming them and teaching them all these words and they're learning it and stuff. And I guess is that the point of being here, is that we kind of have our own fall from grace and we all have the opportunity to find ourselves again. Is that the whole purpose of being here, the sort of duality, to kind of learn beyond that? Is that the purpose of life here, do you think? Or yeah, in a sense, you can say that. In one way of looking at it, there's something that the enlightened or realized being does have the bit. I think I lost signal for a second. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. There's one thing that the sage maybe has that the baby doesn't have, which is that the baby is experiencing reality, but it doesn't know that it's experiencing reality. Yeah. It just is. It's just pure awareness, pure experiencing. And reality wants to have this self-aware knowing of itself, which is why it learns illusions and labels to then at some point begin unlearning them, because now it has the contrast of what it's not to be the sort of mirror to what it is. Yeah. And it's maybe a bit complex to understand, but the basic idea is, if I am myself, how can I ever look at myself like truly? Yeah. We can only look at a reflection of ourselves, right? I can't stand outside of myself and see myself, or I really have a conversation with myself that would be genuine. So the source is like that. It is the source. So it is love. It is peace. But in a sense, it can't know that in a self-aware manner without experiencing delusion for a while. Yes. Because reality is best known in the negative. It's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Yeah. And as we negate more and more things, there's an intuitive understanding that builds within our being of what reality is. You can't say what it is, but you can experience and feel and live what it is. And so, yes, this is very much what reality is doing, is that it wants to learn labels and illusions and be stuck as a dream character, then have the awakening of, oh no, I am the dreamer. Yes. And if you've ever had a lucid dream where you have that experience at night where you realize, oh, I'm dreaming. It's Wednesday night. I'm laying in bed and I'm dreaming of this amazing world. It's always an extremely joyous realization, isn't it? You never get depressed when you wake up in a dream. or if you could maybe capture the feeling you have upon waking up from a nightmare, just that initial realization of, oh, thank God it was just a dream.
Yeah.
And we all have that in our lifetimes, many, many times. That is the exact feeling you will get when you have a spiritual awakening, is this profound sense of relief and like, oh, all is well. I was so convinced that it really was a nightmare, but thank goodness there's no such thing as nightmares in reality.
Yeah. That's great. We've got a question from Stephen. I'll come to that in a second, Stephen. Shannon saying, well put, she really likes your explanation. I want to quickly share with you an experience I had a few years ago now. And I just had my last baby. And so he's really, really small. And in the night, I dreamt that I was in the basement of a hotel. And it was beautiful, like nothing I'd ever seen before, like beautiful wall, a kind of marble I'd never seen. And there was an infinity pool, 2 infinity pools, which when I reflect back at was like a figure of 8, like the actual infinity symbol as an infinity pool. And I was amazed at the beauty of it all. And I said, I want to put the light on. And I put my hand up and all of a sudden the light just came up and I was surrounded by all my ancestors, all my descendants. You know, like time just didn't exist and everyone was around me and this sense of love. And then all of a sudden I felt, you know, like if you were to open a bottle of fizzy pop, like Coca-Cola or something, and the bubbles, they start rising and then they get faster and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
I had this sense that my body, I was leaving my body, or probably the most accurate description was that my body was dissolving and I was shooting up a stairwell towards a window and beyond it was just space. And I just shot right up and it got faster and faster. And it just felt like this orgasm all over. And my only thought in that moment was just of peace. It just felt so amazing. And I was out of my body and I was hurtling through whatever it was. And my only thought was, I'm going to know all the answers. I'm going to the source. I had this great sense of homecoming.
Yeah.
And it felt amazing, like nothing I'd ever experienced. And then I said, it's not my time. And I was back in my body. And it was such a very real experience. It felt like I could have actually gone for good in that moment. But I had responsibilities, you know, to my little baby and my other kids and husband and stuff. But it felt so real. And what I'm left with is this feeling that you can die like that. You can leave your body and feel a sense of exaltation. Obviously, I won't know until I actually experience it. And I might not experience it in that way, but it's so profound. It's really shifted my reality quite a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Sorry, this is about you, not me. But
no, I love hearing these experiences people have, because although they're unique in their own ways, it's all the same experience.
Yes.
Like when you read near-death experiences.
Yeah.
Which I obsessed over when I left the church, because I'm like, I need answers. Who has answers?
It's dead people.
Dead people, yeah.
Yeah. And what did you learn from your near-death experiences?
Well, so the amazing thing I found was that there was all these commonalities in them. Some of which being, I left my body. I was floating above my body in the room. So there's this like consciousness outside the body, or not dependent on the body. And then there's this overwhelming feeling of peace and well-being, that if they were in a violent car accident and, you know, there's someone resuscitating them or whatever, they're just looking at it with this bliss, like, oh, it's all perfect. It's all just a dream meant to happen this way. I'm free. And then there's this going towards the light, the source, the light, they usually call it. The source is always this non-judging, unconditionally loving presence of intelligence.
Yes.
Life review happens. And also with spiritual awakenings, right? Whenever people have the epiphany I was just describing a moment ago, it's impossible to have the recognition, I am the one reality, I am consciousness itself. It is literally impossible to experience that as anything but bliss.
Yeah.
And I find that to be amazing.
Yes. Yeah, that so rings. That's how I felt in that moment.
It's like, try to come up with a problem. If you're pure consciousness, eternal and infinite, where's the suffering in that, right? Where's the stories in that? It's like, no matter what way you slice it, it's impossible to come up with a reason to suffer from that point of view.
Yes. And actually, thank you. That's a really good steer back to the title of the show.
Suffering. Yeah.
This has almost become about awakening. And actually, what we're talking about is finding freedom and ending suffering, which may be awakening. But,
Yes.
I just want to go back to Stephen. I've flashed his question up a couple of times and then taken it down. He gets the map territory stuff, but don't our experiences have some value to our consciousness? What would you like to add to that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Everything. What's a good way of saying this? There's nothing wasted in reality. Reality doesn't waste any moment or any experience. So all the time we spend in the delusion that I'm a separate person, just living this one lifetime, my annihilation draws nigh. So I must take what I can get while I can get it. That's the normal default mode. So totally an illusion, doesn't exist. No proof of that idea anywhere you look. But it's not a waste of time. Because again, you are giving yourself or source in you the contrast it needs to eventually have that awakening of, okay, if I'm not that, which I know I'm not that now, what is left to be? Well, just the infinite. And so it needs that experience. It needs that delusion or illusion to know truth or reality. So that's why nothing is to be judged. Nothing is to be said is invalid. All of it is happening for intelligence, by intelligence, and it's all perfect.
Great. I hope that answered that for you, Steve, and let us know if you want anything else clearing up for you. So finding freedom then and ending suffering. I think about freedom a lot. That's kind of one of my big drives is freedom. Am I free in this moment? How can I be freer? How can I feel the freedom? And I don't concentrate so much on suffering, but I do realize that I do feel it. So like my conscious mind seems to be on freedom, 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 but actually underneath there's something always lurking, like thinking, "Oh, you might suffer there." How do people get real to their suffering, do you think, in the first place, to realize that they need to find freedom?
You say, how do people
get real to their suffering? Or like, because for me, I think I had like a little quiet whisper that used to come up every now and again, like a very egoic voice, and you'd just hear this little whisper, and I would ignore it for a lot of the time. And then one day I actually like listened to it, and I realized that I had a much bigger problem about something than I really did. But a lot of people seem to live in a place of suffering, from my own limited perspective, and they accept it as that's just what life is. Do you get my meaning?
Right. Yes.
So how do people get real to the fact that they might be suffering in the first place?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question because each soul comes to that recognition when their time is come. So some souls alive today, they're just going to live an entire life lost in that belief that I'm a person, suffering is the way reality really is, and they're never going to have a moment of inquiry or questioning. And then their next lifetime, maybe they've accumulated enough karma and suffering that their soul begins to question, and then they start to wake up. So the best analogy I can find for this is the caterpillar and butterfly analogy. So we said a moment ago that reality before manifestation, it just is everything it is, but it doesn't have a self-aware knowledge of that until it creates manifestation. And of course, it's all simultaneous. So there's never been a time where it didn't have manifestation, but just as a concession to words, we can say it this way. So that's the caterpillar phase. Caterpillar is just innocent. It's just going around eating leaves, enjoying itself. It doesn't know that it's truly a butterfly lying in wait. So the caterpillar, based on instincts, once it eats enough leaves and gets fat enough, starts to spin a cocoon around itself. And it spins the cocoon and then it hibernates for a while. And as it's hibernating in the cocoon, the butterfly wings start to grow. And I believe what happens biologically is that the actual caterpillar body sort of dissolves, maybe not totally, but some enzymes are produced that dissolve the old away. And then the new butterfly's insect's body forms and then the wings form. So as it's growing, right, at a certain point, the butterfly grows large enough that it's starting to suffocate in the shell. And so that's when the thrashing starts to happen.
Yeah.
So when we watch a butterfly break out of its cocoon, we all go, wow, what a beautiful thing to witness. Oh, look at it. It's so beautiful. But from the butterfly's point of view, it was having a near-death experience.
Oh my goodness. I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's the suffering that causes the butterfly to begin, jabbing around and trying to break out of this shell. And once it breaks out of the shell, then it sees itself in its true sort of final form. It's this gorgeous brand new creature that can now fly, like it's free, right? It's unbounded. And that's what happens with us, is that we suffer so much that there's just this survival instinct sort of thing that kicks in of like this, I've got to get out of this. I've got to stop suffering. And that's all I can really say was for me, is that from the time I can remember, like I always had this huge aversion towards suffering. Something about it felt wrong. Like this can't be right. This can't be the nature of reality. Surely something has gone wrong somewhere that I'm feeling this way. And I do attribute that to the God that I was taught from childhood in church, that God is love, God is goodness. He wants only good. He does only good. And I'm thankful for that upbringing, because it was what taught me to question my suffering, as I know that this isn't the nature of God, and I know this isn't God doing it to me. So I've got to figure out where I've messed up.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess so when we do decide to end the suffering and we find our way out of that, that is when the freedom begins. Is that what you'd say?
Well, it's different as well, because each soul, again, has different levels of karma.
Yeah.
And so some rare beings like Eckhart Tolle or many of the sages we could name, they're clearly very old souls. So they're carrying many more lifetimes of experience, which means their vibration is much higher than maybe the average soul here. Yeah. So when they come to questioning, like, Eckhart Tolle's famous story, I think he was 30 years old and he was lying in bed saying, I cannot live with myself any longer. I cannot live with myself any longer. And then the question came to his awareness, who is the me that I can't live with? There's two selves in here. Which one's the real self? And that question sparked an immediate destruction or annihilation of the ego that never came back again, similar to Byron Katie. So that can happen, that the question brings instant freedom. But for the overwhelming majority of us, it's more of a slow dissolving, a slow cooking process where these mental tendencies keep arising into awareness, and we continually question, wait, who's having that thought? Who feels that way? Who cares about that story? And then inquiry goes on, and you just dissolve slowly, bit by bit, that separate self, belief system. And that's been more my experience, but I'm very thankful that I had the glimpse that I had to give me sort of that verifiable evidence to draw from, that no, total freedom is absolutely available. So whatever appears that doesn't seem like absolute freedom to me, I'm going to question it. Yes.
I think that's a really good habit, actually. You were talking about unlearning things, and actually it's what we're doing with our kids. We're kind of unschooling them, trying to get them to question everything, which we may be doing more damage than good, but hey, it seems to be working for the moment. I think we have to be vigilant, don't we? Because if we're not, it would be very easy to slip back into this reality, because it's kind of, there are bonuses, we're kind of paid well when we play the game of reality.
Yes, very well said.
Yeah, it's very enticing. And what I'm seeing playing out right now is kind of like a global awakening. Whether it's a full-on spontaneous one or not, I don't know. But I'm seeing this kind of shift in consciousness going on right now. I wonder what it looks like from your perspective. Is that what you're sensing in the field? I mean, what do you do? Like, do you tune into everything? I mean, you don't have to, do you? I mean, are you just connected to everything all the time?
Yeah, I think that becomes more your direct experience once you begin to embody these understandings of I really am everything. Everything is experiencing this point of view right now called Aaron.
Yeah.
which is a unique expression of the one, and it's beautiful in its own right, but it's just a dream. It's not ultimately reality because it's impermanent. It doesn't last. And that one consciousness is also experiencing every other point of view. And that just becomes intuitively very obvious and clear. So it's not like you have to remind yourself to love or not to judge.
Mm-hmm.
You just lose the capability of judging. It makes such little sense to you to judge others when you know they're really just you having another experience.
Yeah.
That you're just like, yeah, no, if I was in that body and I lived that lifetime, I would, yeah, all the stuff they believe.
Yes, I totally get you. I love that. That's really, from my perspective, that just seems really kind and generous as well.
Right. That's love.
So it's loving, isn't it? It's a loving way to be. And Shannon's actually agreed. She's also said, yes, I find if I'm not listening into the whispers, my body will bring it to my attention. I've always questioned the suffering belief too. So yes. I think we can experience these things from multiple levels, can't we? Not just, like you were saying with Eckhart, he was thinking about it and his thinking actually brought about the awakening, but we could actually feel it into reality too.
Oh, very much so. That's sort of the hallmark teaching in my masterclass is what I call the 3 beliefs of ego, which are thought remnants of our 3 negative emotions. Or another way of looking at it is our 3 negative emotions: sadness, anger, and fear. There's many variations of those 3 emotions, but just those 3 basic primal energies, sadness, anger, and fear, root chakra, sacral chakra, solar plexus chakra. Yeah. Those emotions are actually responding to 3 misperceptions of reality that the mind has, which is essentially the belief in lack.
Yes.
The idea that outcomes can fulfill me. I call it outcome happiness. We're always looking to some thing or object to deliver me fulfillment. That's the second misperception, is nothing in the world has fulfillment in it. And the third would be basically personal doership. I'm the doer. I'm the controller. I'm making life happen. I'm turning the gears of life, right? And so if I turn the gears and a negative outcome happens, that's called guilt. If I turn the gears and a positive outcome happens, that's pride.
Yeah.
But neither is happening. You are one of the gears, right?
Yeah. I love that. One of the things I find as a coach is guilt seems to rear its head quite a lot in people's lives. You know, the guilt about. So that's personal doership, and that is based on a false reality. It's a fake.
Right. I am the doer is the false reality.
Yes. Yes, that's great. I love that. I remember I used to listen to Brian Tracy years and years ago, about 20 years ago, and he used to say there are guilt throwers and guilt catchers. They're always really well matched
right.
to play that game. I like that. So sadness, anger, and fear are the emotions on the beliefs in lack, outcome, happiness, and personal doership. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your mentorship programs then. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, seeing as you're here?
Sure, yeah.
To connect with you, and presumably they'll be connecting with you to enter into one of your programs.
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel where I teach about these things for free. Obviously, I have, a couple hundred videos, many different playlist series. The one that would be most relevant to this discussion today is my series called Mind Science, which is about the nature of the mind and things. So if people want to go deeper and really find practical applications of how to embody these understandings in a lived experiential way, I have an 8-week masterclass that's sort of designed to take the concept into a reality through these practices and things we do. So I actually created recently a 4-week free masterclass called The 4 Yogas, which you can find on my YouTube channel. And it's like a taste test of what my masterclass is like, where each week has video lecture that teaches the primary practice and concept for the week, like non-doership maybe. And then a worksheet that gives you the practice to go throughout the week. And then there's a weekly mantra for each lesson that you repeat just constantly. And we give you a phone wallpaper background with the mantra on it. So, every time you open your phone, you're seeing it and just really saturating your
Yeah.
mind in it.
Yes.
And then we have a guided meditation that you do every morning, which also just ingrains the understanding for 10 or 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And then a Q&A at the end of each week where I sort of went and answered people's questions about the practice. So that's how the math class is structured, but it's 8 weeks and a little bit deeper than the 4-week one. So if people are interested in what that might be like, they can go take the 4-week one to get a sort of a free sample. And then they can click on the link to book a discovery call with somebody on my team to kind of talk with them about if this course is right for them and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so that's the course that I offer. And then the other one is just my ACIM program that I mentioned at the beginning, where we go live every morning and do the daily lesson.
Yeah, ACIM, A Course in Miracles, right? Just for people that don't recognize that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the Course in Miracles briefly?
Yeah, A Course in Miracles is one of my very favorite texts. It's a channeled text from the 1970s. And it's basically about how to find the peace of God or inner freedom. And it's written or channeled from the sort of gospel language of the New Testament. So it's a non-duality text that uses Christian language as the pointers to these non-dual truths. So it will use words that we grew up with, like salvation, the Christ, Holy Spirit, but it gives very deep non-dual and spiritual understanding and meaning to these words that is, I find, to just be endlessly profound and really is sort of a handbook to enlightenment. So it has a main text, which is very, very long. And then it has 165 daily lessons that you just do one lesson every day. And it sort of just reprograms your mind to see reality rather than the ego's world. And so, we go live every day with our group and do the lesson. And then we have a master class on Thursday nights where we discuss one of the key terms or words that the course uses and kind of really break open the meaning behind it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've got quite a few friends that go around and around and around the book, and what they're still marvel. I've got a friend who's gone around it for 10 years and is still learning more. It goes deeper.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It gets deeper every time you do it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's fantastic. So the Higher Self Expo is coming up, isn't it? I think you're going live on the 17th of July. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so I'm going to be teaching from the Law of One, which is a great text for science meets spirituality.
Yeah.
And I believe I'm going to be talking about the science of reincarnation as taught in the Law of One through the 7 densities model that it teaches. So it's sort of like the blueprint that the soul takes on its evolutionary path. Wow. And at some point in that blueprint or path, we become the higher self. And so there'll be a lot of maybe new angles or understandings of what the higher self is. The Law of One teaches that are really, really profound and obviously just kind of matches the name of the expo very well. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. Yeah,
it'd be great. Thank you. Well, I feel like I've had loads of your time right now. And I guess, I think we've sort of spoken around finding freedom and ending suffering. Like, what is the definition of suffering? How we know we're free, and a little bit around that. Do you want to leave us with one final thought? What final thought do you think would be really good for people who are listening in today?
Sure. Yeah. I think what you just said might be a good conclusion to this discussion. What is the definition of, there's a different ways we could just define it, but Buddha defined it.
Always confusing, isn't it?
Which right arm, left arm? Defined suffering as you suffer because you desire, right? Is what the Buddha said. And so to me, suffering is really a misplaced desire when we desire impermanent things. So anything in the world. When we desire the transient, we have to suffer from that because we're attaching our sense of fulfillment to an unreality or something that isn't lasting. So it's destined to let us down. And if we can just sort of turn that desire around, the source from which it comes from, we find instantly that all desire actually is for God, to know God, to love God. And this has been what really maybe capitulated my journey, was almost coming back to my Christian roots after spending so much time in the wisdom traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism, Advaita Vedanta. I learned so much about reality that the Christian tradition couldn't have taught me. And I needed that desperately. But at some point, like, the well felt dry. And I felt like, I know all of these understandings and non-duality, but I still feel something is missing. There's an essence that I'm still looking for. What is it? And at some point it dawned on me, like I remembered, almost like a trauma that you've forgotten. It was like I had forgotten my entire life as a Christian kid was spent just in daily worship and admiration, and every moment in the car, being alone in my classroom, I was just always thinking about God, looking at the clouds and wondering what God is like, and just being lost in this mystery and wonder of who God is. Yeah. And it clicked for me, like, oh, that's what it is. Like, I used to love God. Like, you can love God. I almost forgot. I was so busy trying to know God that I forgot that God is love. And that was what really sort of ended the journey for me. I no longer feel like I'm on a to get free or find something. I'm just daily enjoying and living and deepening in this love affair that I have for God. And so my teachings are more and more pointed in that direction. I love talking non-duality and the nature of the mind, but that in and of itself can't truly liberate the soul, because it's the love of God that does that. So just to remember that love is the ultimate answer to what we're all looking for, I think, is the highest truth that there is.
So you really have gone on a circular journey then, haven't you?
Very much so. Yes.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for your time today, Aaron. I've really enjoyed connecting with you and hearing more from you. And I hope we get to do something like this again at some point in the future. But it's been great. Thank you so much.
I would love it very much. And thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
So what do you reckon? Did you enjoy that as much as I did? It was awesome. I absolutely love him to bits. He's just great. What I really like about him is, when I was asking Aaron questions, he would answer things, with, it would seem like this, or it would seem so, and that really matches my sort of model of the world, when I think about oneness and connection and connectivity, and the fact that everything is possible and nothing is impossible. And so, his answer really reflected a deep truth, because he was, understanding that my perception and his perception could be completely different, as is everybody's perception, and that we're all the same. We're all the same, experiencing life, I guess, from a different perspective, but we're all connected. And so, I loved how he answered that. The thing that really brought this round to me was his last answer, when I asked the question, what would you like to leave everyone with? And, how he was talking about he had come to know religion and then needed to feel like he'd come to know God and then realized he'd lost the feeling or the love of God that he had as a child, and that he needed to reconnect to that. And so that was just so heartfelt. I really understand that, because I guess a bit like you guys, I'm sure you have those moments where you feel so connected that you just there's nothing like it. What a great guest, eh? So if you want to connect with him, just go to www.aaronabke, that's AARONABKE.com. And he's, like he said, he's got his big three: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. He's got a massive following. He's obviously got a lot of influence. He's doing very well for himself. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Louisa Tanner Munson. And you can follow me, just, hashtag feelgoodastrology, or send me a message, louisa@feelgoodastrology.com. But anyway, I love the fact that you've connected with me here today. And hopefully we'll connect again in the near future. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then why not support today's guest at the Higher Self Expo in July 2021? The Higher Self Expo is a worldwide 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are all sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com.